Looks like we're started here. Since I hold to a primarily monergistic view in my theological standpoint, I must therefore then hold to some view or some way of saying, some view of there being two wills in God, with there being one overall sovereign will. And what brought this up was the fact that I was hanging out last night listening to my old friends and acquaintances from our Third Street ministry in Santa Monica talking in their Google Hangout, and I started to chime in, give my little 2 cents in the comment box. So someone brought up a possible objection. These are Christians, all of them, but they like to mention some possible objections and so forth. How the person was saying, how come it is the case, the matter that God condemns or commands against human sacrifice, and Jesus Christ was crucified on the cross according to God's will? Well, that's the game. I don't want to pick at anyone specifically. They just, to my taste, were not cutting to the heart of the matter as much as I like, although it's a delicate topic once you get into how God decrees sin or not. Is God the author of sin? That's a delicate topic. But I think it's okay to say that there's two wills in God. The one is the overall sovereign will. That's God's sovereign will. God gives the sovereign will when he decrees all things that come to pass. Commands to men what is expected of men. Those are his moral commands and so forth for men, and different commands and different laws in the various covenants. So when I say that there are two wills in God, that is what I mean. I don't mean there's two different sovereign decrees, or two. I don't mean something like that. When minister confession of faith, the most wise and holy counsel of his own will freely and unchangeably ordain whatsoever comes to pass. Yes, so as thereby neither is God the author of sin. That's okay. That's something that's been argued over and over, for or against. Anyway, what's talking about there is God's sovereign will. That's not talking about what I was referring to as the moral or prescriptive will, where God gives his commands, and indeed throughout the covenants, throughout the ages, starting with Genesis, there's a transcendent moral law. So since God's nature doesn't change, the goodness of God doesn't change. The transcendent moral law is still throughout all time. It's generally the same things are always right and wrong. Anyway, so they're on their monergism. Last night I was chatting with them, and I was being ignored a little bit. I am being a little bit like settling the score here in the matter for myself this morning. The scriptures say we're supposed to give an answer, a defense to all who ask. We're supposed to give an answer, a defense. To be a little friction there. I'm sorry. I have. Excuse me for a second here, people. I have my own equivalent of Snurdly. Rush Limbaugh had Snurdly. I have my friend Snurdly here. Yeah, Snurdly's here with me. Anyway, it's supposed to give an answer, and there seemed to be a little friction. Any kind of like one answer possible to something, or any kind of answer that's a better answer than other answers, and they can comment on my video here and speak up for themselves. I'm not calling anyone out specifically. It's just a little bit of friction on the idea. Is some kind of an answer that can be given for something. We want to hem and haw and go over every possible little like theological nook and cranny. What about giving an answer, a defense to all who ask? Because 1 Peter 3:15, 16 says, but sanctify Christ as Lord in your hearts, always being ready to make a defense to everyone, an answer to everyone who asks you, to give an account for the hope that is in you, yet with gentleness and reverence. That goes against trends and current thought. Okay, there's not supposed to be an answer. There's not supposed to be an answer to something. Well, that's not biblical thought. Okay, the biblical commands tell us to give, the apologetics verses tell us to give an answer. All right, so I was mentioning an article by John Piper that I looked at in a soteriology class. Piper holds the unconditional election. Hold on a second, people. I'm getting some interruptions here. Piper holds the unconditional election. So he holds a similar Calvinist standpoint as what I hold. And he definitely talks about the death of Christ as being an illustration of the two wills in God. Because while Jesus was betrayed and executed, that was sin. God disapproves of that morally evil act inspired by Satan, or done by, inspired immediately by Satan, Luke 22:3. Again, I ask my audience to be patient with me. Can you guys keep it down? I rebuke the devil here. I rebuke the devil in the name of Jesus. The betrayal of Christ was an act immediately inspired by evil act inspired immediately by Satan, as it says in Luke 22:3. In Acts 2:23, Luke says this Jesus was delivered up according to the divine plan and foreknowledge of God. It also says something similar in Acts 4:27-30. Speaking of, as it says here, your holy servant Jesus, whom you anointed, both Herod and Pontius Pilate, along with the Gentiles and the peoples of Israel, to do whatever your hand, your purpose predestined to occur. The crucifixion was predestined to occur. And Jesus lived a perfectly righteous life. Jesus lived a perfectly righteous life and was crucified. And that crucifixion was sovereignly preordained to happen. And at the same time, everything that God does is perfectly just, righteous, and good. So you see, the crucifixion of Jesus, his death and resurrection, it simply begs to differ with anyone who wants to make it so simple. So simple as to say that there is only one. Let's just say oversimplifying the matter, because it is at the same time the case of the matter that the actions that led